What's up, everyone? I'm Joe Lemon, and thank you so much for tuning in to The Real Value Exchange. And so I'm going to pick up on part 2 of my conversation with Juntae DeLane. Man, and one of the important takeaways from this conversation is the amount of strategy and the amount of analytics that he pays attention to when it comes to making content. A lot of times I know that even myself, especially, I get focused in on creating the creative piece, and you want to have something that's going to be engaging and something that's going to draw people in, of course. And that's important, but just equally as important is your distribution and having a strategy to how you're going to break up whatever long form content you have into microbytes that's going to be digestible, things that you can put on multiple platforms and that's going to be relevant to that platform. So with that said, guys, let's dive right back into part 2 with the episode with Juntae DeLane.
Resync is a new patent-pending nitric oxide formula loaded with natural extracts such as red spinach, the newest and only standardized natural nitrate on the market, aronia berry, top antioxidant in the world, and red beets, all 3 of which are the nitric oxide precursors. What else do you get in a one serving of Resync? Turmeric, ginger, mango extract, and inulin. Boost your daily vitality with Resync like a pro athlete.
Nuggets too within your podcast and things like that.
I'm learning.
We'll get to it. Absolutely.
Yeah,
we'll
please.
Get to it for sure.
I mean, man, it's one of those things where just that process of trying to figure out how you want to go about building this brand is it's such a journey, I mean, and it's not that nice, smooth, linear path I was hoping it would be, right? To say, okay, this is what I'm going to do. People are going to respond to it, especially I thought it was a great point that you brought up with breaking down episodes into multiple pieces of like content, because a lot of times, especially in the very beginning, I'm like, okay, show's up, guys, get it. Right. You're like, everybody's going to flood to it, right? It is like, but you forget there's 5 million other podcasts out there. Right. And so how do you cut through the clutter and how do you kind of reach your right target? Mm-hmm. And man, that's been such a just learning process for myself. And I could imagine when you're talking to larger companies that have larger budgets and more kind of bandwidth to bring on people to help hit all those different channels, it's a much different conversation than it is with the small to medium guys, right? So so how do you kind of how do you kind of push people who don't want to be pushed into like social media, knowing that there is a benefit for everybody there, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'll give you an example. Working with this very large CPA firm. They have about 16 offices internationally. Nice. And they're trying to shape their brand voice, right? Mm-hmm. They're about 30 years old, so they're kind of stuck in their ways. Mm-hmm. It's very buttoned up, mm-hmm. right? And so what I did with them is I called a half-day meeting in their conference room, and I had all the key stakeholders there that wanted a seat at the table when talking about their brand voice, mm-hmm. and identifying, okay, what do you guys stand for as a company? What's the culture like? Here's what I'm seeing from the outside based on what your social media engagements, based on what's on your website, and the content that you're producing. Mm-hmm. So from an outsider, these are my perceptions. Is that correct? And the majority of the time, it's not. Right? It's they want to be conveyed as something different. So I say, okay, well, there's obviously a gap there. Here's what you think you are, and here's what other people think you are. Right?
Sure, yeah.
So how can we fill that gap? And so one of the things that I love to do is making sure that we have these brand pillars that are established, and those brand pillars consist of their imagery, consist of the communication, consist of the logo, consist of the colors, mm-hmm. And so on. And identifying really the true essence of the business and the employees that work within it, right? And so I think a lot of times that larger brands get very confused with their communications because the market changes,
right? Yeah,
so often, and so it's
quick these days too.
Exactly.
Man. Yeah.
So the think about it this way: 10 years ago, actually, let's say 15 years ago, it was good to be big. It was good to be corporate. It was good to be big.
Right. Yeah.
Then you had the financial crisis, with the housing market collapsing and so on, right?
Yep.
Then you have the Occupy Wall Street movement, right? And so I'm making a point here. I know it's like I'm going off.
No, this is good. This is perfect.
So you have consumers have a strong distrust with larger corporations. And those large corporations are starting to position themselves as small because they see it. So you'll start to notice people on commercials representing these large brands that really don't look like, that's interesting. Like they don't have, they're probably slightly overweight, or they're different. They have freckles,
right?
Or you wouldn't imagine that this person with this light skin or this dark skin or whatever the case may be, they're just not very commercial based on what we are used to seeing in like the early 90s with the Colgate smile, the smooth skin, the perfect hair, like. That's not it anymore. And so brands have to readjust based on that, right? So in order to win the day, you have to look at what the consumers are resonating with and making sure that you are coming off as authentic.
Man, that's a phenomenal point, man, because it's one of those things where there has been some major shifts, and it's funny we're having this conversation, because I'm always under the belief that a lot of times things are changed from the top down, but sometimes they are from bottom up, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, man. So and those two examples that you brought up are bottom up examples, right, where people are starting to pivot now, because you are seeing more of those. He looks a little more.
Like you would see him on a commercial or see her on a commercial.
Yeah. I mean, I think the only people still doing it are those perfume ads. The perfume ads from Macy's still haven't really cut. They haven't, everybody still jump out the pool. Everybody's got the nice 8-pack. I mean, but outside of that, man, but you're seeing a lot of larger brands finding ways to look more, I guess, like the general population.
Absolutely.
Man, so that's interesting though. Do you think that's a trend that's going to last, or do you think it's just a wave? I should say, is that something that's kind of going to be a much larger, I should say larger, but much more long-term play, or is it just a wave that's coming in and out?
So I think that there are ebbs and flows, and I think there's certain trends that would come back around, right? So when you look, for example, at magazines, when you look at print mail pieces, things like that, right? When you open up your mailbox, if you have something in your mailbox now, it's like, it's almost a novelty. You're actually going to probably pick it up and open it, because the amount of mail that we get is completely decreased.
100%.
People aren't sending mail like that anymore. But if you want to sort of, do something a little bit different outside of the norm, you could probably send a mail piece and it'd be a successful campaign. But 10 years ago, no one would even think about sending their mail piece. All the CMO budgets for print collateral and direct mail campaigns have shrunk, right? But I think there's an opportunity there. Even with magazines, you're going to start to see more magazines because people are going to start to want to touch and feel things.
Interesting,
right?
Yeah.
There could be a divide between when you have purist, right, and you have and futurist, right? So physical books versus ebooks, like all those different tools that we normally use in different mediums are going to start to rear up, and so I say that because. Your question about do you think this is a fad or not? Right. I think that it certainly could come back around. Right. It could be a point where people start to eat unhealthy again. Right. It could be a point to where people start reading physical books over ebooks or no books at all. Right. And start to listen to more podcasts like this and so on. Right. So, it's important to think about the ebbs and flows of consumer behavior because you want to be ahead of the curve. Right. Because if the larger the organization is, it's like a locomotive, right? It's going to take a long time to get up and rolling to get speed, right? But then once you're up to speed, it's going to take a lot longer to slow down. So you need to go where the market is going and not necessarily where the market is, right? When you're planning these larger infrastructure. As a smaller business, you're able to be more nimble and you can adjust. But it's important to think about that consumer behavior and how it changes over time so that you can set up your marketing strategies accordingly.
Counterculture, man, is a lot what I'm thinking about what you're talking about, those, because, everybody's talking about, only thing left is Facebook ads. That's what works. That's the only way. And it's like, true, because I run Facebook ads and they seem to be pretty solid. But I mean, at the right price, a mailer it can get the job done too.
Right.
You know,
right.
I mean, I think sometimes we get so one-dimensional and just stuck, and we want to put our actual flag on the ground and say, this is the hill I'm going to die on.
Right.
You know,
right.
and as we're saying that, the whole movement's shifting back a different way.
Correct,
man. How do you help companies get off that hill, man?
I think one, it starts with making them aware of what actually is going on.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and when I go into companies, I'm sure there are people that have the same amount of experience as me, smarter than me, whatever the case may be.
But they probably weren't like a DJ though, man. Come on. They probably were holding down as a DJ.
They probably wanted to, the point I'm trying to make here is sometimes it takes a person from the outside to bring in another perspective,
right.
That they can listen to. And so trying to get them up and going is really identifying like what's most effective. And every business is different. You may have a CMO that's steadfast on, they think that TV advertising is where it's at.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to figure out a way to get to them. And I really, some of my strategies are if there are certain individuals or stakeholders that I need to really get in their pocket so I can help them and, get over whatever issue that they have in the digital space, put them on a draft board. And I try to figure out different tactics to communicate with them on their level, right? The level that they want to that resonates with them. And so doing research, speaking with other people, playing detective, man. That's really, really what it all is about. And so you have to do all of that stuff to create buy-in. That's the first step. Now, once you create buy-in, once you have their ear, then that's when you start helping them implement different tactics that would really resonate with their target audience.
Man, so I first started this actual podcast because I've been doing sales for years, and I feel like when I first got out the gate as a salesperson, I was horrible, and I used a lot of garbage tactics. Just a lot of foolishness, right? Coming out the gate, and I was like, look, there's a better way. And that's one of the main reasons why I wanted to have this actual podcast. And like you're saying, just you have to seek to understand as you're actually talking about, man, getting in there, trying to get on the level, but really play doctor almost and say, all right, let's see what's going on here, analyze the actual case, because every case is a little bit different, I'm assuming, right?
Yes.
Man, so, but it's funny dealing with certain customers. Do you find yourself having to walk away from certain people who just want to say, hey, this is the way I believe that it really needs to go?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I say that because sometimes, depending on your situation, if you really need clients, if you don't, whatever the case may be.
Sure.
Part of my ethos really is I just want to win.
Yeah.
Right. And so, what does that mean? Well, for me, winning is taking a brand from A to Z. Right. And if I feel like the situation isn't right to do so, then that's when I just refer them to digitalbrandinginstitute.com so they can learn everything they can.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
But I feel like I can understand a situation if they have a culture that is at least wanting to learn more about how to be better, right? Then I can work with that. If they have enough investment, if they have financial investment around, these initiatives, that's even better, right? And so those are some of the things that I look at. And then also just, whatever their offering is, if it helps better the lives of other people, then I'm like, I'm all in.
Yeah,
And
I got you. Yeah.
So those are kind of like the key things that I look at.
Smart.
When trying to decide if I should work with someone or not. And
you have a good
it's paid off so far.
That's really good, man, because pretty much what you're telling people is that you have a good value system for yourself prior to even coming into the meeting, it sounds like.
Correct.
So you're not just looking for them to kind of, give you the budget and say, can I work with this amount?
Right.
But it's more so, do our core values link up? Is it going to make sense for us to actually do business or not?
Correct. And so a lot of times it has to do with timing.
True.
So, they just may not have it at that particular time. So, I've created systems to keep in touch with them. Right, to make sure that I'm feeding them the right information so they can at least stay up to date with what's going on.
Nice.
Then when they're ready to move, then hopefully I can be top of mind.
That's solid, man. Super, super solid. Man, so there's so many quote unquote gurus in the field these days, but especially when it comes to marketing, man. Yep. I feel like more than most other sectors, you see people popping up, claiming to know what everything in the market or be that go-to. How do you kind of cut through some of that noise, man? Because it seems pretty loud.
Yeah, no, it is loud. Yeah. But you know what? I don't even pay attention to it.
That's smart play.
But I notice it for sure because there's especially after, again, kind of going back to the financial meltdown, housing meltdown. A lot of people from the real estate industry started to become social media experts. Right, that was like the next thing. I noticed that. Yeah. But then now, as social media starts to plateau, right, social media marketing, it's either you running Facebook ads or you're not. Like at this point, right? Yeah. And so then you had your like Facebook ad experts, but then after the whole Cambridge Analytica data breach, that whole thing. Facebook has really locked down their system, and so brands really aren't able to communicate with Facebook users like they used to. And so there has to be the next thing, right? People are searching for the next thing. Here comes digital branding. So you'll start to see more branding experts now.
Okay.
Because
that's the next wave.
That's the next wave.
Okay.
Mark my words.
Okay.
Right.
I can believe it. Yeah.
People are going to start to be position themselves as branding experts. So one of the ways that I rise above the noise, as you mentioned, is just to continue putting out good content. Yeah. And so there's no MO outside of the fact that I just want to evangelize digital branding. That's why I call myself a digital branding evangelist. And I've started Digital Branding Institute because of that. I want as many people as possible to consume the content. And so I understand also that, a lot of these digital marketing tactics are starting to become short-lived or starting to plateau. So when thinking about what's next, it's all about digital branding. Multiple touch points in the digital space to actually convert your target audience.
That's a great point, man, because as you said this, like I think it was last week whenever Twitter came through and chopped off, I guess, 30% of all the bots that are out there. And I mean, and I think even on like Instagram, I'm seeing less people visit the page. There's like a little tweaks in these algorithms that are always happening. Yep. And so people are jumping from from LinkedIn to Twitter video. Everybody has the little like bullet point out there, but it is more that mix. Marketing has always been a mix. I mean, if you're doing it right, I believe, right?
Yes.
I mean, you would never not say never, but there's very few cases where you could probably see people saying, I'm on this one channel heavy and that's it, unless you don't have a big budget to do more. So branding online, what's some of the math that people need to start paying more attention to, like, because a lot of times people are really into the art that we were talking about and putting together really good clips and videos and pictures, or even like blog posts. But what's some of the numbers that people should be looking at that's going to help them convert to something that actually makes sense for them?
Well, I think looking at the data with regard to numbers is important, and so that data meaning understanding what traffic is coming to your website, making sure that you can gather as much data as possible, utilizing whether it be Facebook pixels or AdWords or whatever the case may be, and then obviously setting up a system to collect this information, because people are going to be exposed to your brand and coming from disparate sources, right? So you want to make sure that you're able to collect information on anyone that comes across your brand. It's very, very, very important, because there's so many things out there. They stumble across your brand, they could bounce for whatever reason. Yeah. Whether it be the information that they're looking for is not readily available, whether it's your website is running too slow, or whatever you have on your page, they just don't like, right? So you have to figure out that stuff. So looking at the data is going to help you to do that, right? So that's the science part. But the art part comes in with regard to your creativity in presenting things in ways that your target audience is going to be surprised by, and it's at least going to stop them in their tracks. So it could be bad, it could be good, but if it can stop them in their tracks for a moment, then you left an impression on them. And that's where the art comes into play.
Man, you know, getting people to stop these days is like, if you can get that to pull out, if you can pull that off, like get people to invest 30 seconds is real.
That's a long time.
I mean, seriously though, man, like if you could pull somebody in for a good 30 seconds, that's like a major pull off, man. Was there anything from, you know, whenever you were like DJing and coming up in the whole music scene that you've seen that people are kind of doing back then that's also working now? Any of those tactics that are kind of crossing over?
Oh, as far as on the digital space, because, you know, I mean, digital's changed.
Oh, sure.
You know, so much. So a lot of the tactics kind of have changed. But
it's a good point. Yeah, I mean, but any of those, because I just talk about music because I feel like if you can grow music, especially hip hop, how it was a lot of hand in hand. Yep. I mean, guerrilla tactics. It was very raw, you know, and that was the beauty of it. I feel like because a lot of times it was somebody with a flyer having an actual street team, you know, come to the club, and then you would meet people there, you know. I mean, so it was very belly to belly, old school. Yep. I mean, that's how I like to actually do sales. So I don't like to only do the Skype call. I'm like, man, we got to link up and do dinner or brunch or something, right? Do you see any of those tactics kind of working on the whole digital space as well? I mean, any of those old school tactics of just being human, I guess?
You know, I think it enhances it, right? So I think the human to human interactions are still there, especially in different sectors. But, you know, if you put a layer of digital on top of that, it's going to enhance that experience. So, for example, if you're having brunch or meeting with a potential client and you go to their LinkedIn profile, right, you'll be able to check out information about them. Or if you set up a widget or have an app that automatically scrapes their information and then puts it on your phone to let them know that this is what college they've gone to, these are the organizations and affiliations they have, and it reads it out to you.
It's a nice play. It's a nice play, though, yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So obviously it's going to enhance that. So it kind of helps you with efficiency, and it helps to fuse those relationships, but then it's just up to us to kind of keep them going and figuring out, you know, the best way to interact with that potential client going forward, whether it's continuing those lunches or just continue having updates on your LinkedIn account, sending emails, sending them additional content about whatever is challenging them.
Sure.
For example. So again, I think just overlaying that digital aspect to that prospecting and doing business, it only enhances.
Yeah. I mean, I can totally see that. I bet people who were just like myself, who were like, all right, I'm about to have a meeting with you, and then all of a sudden, you know, they go right online immediately. That's kind of what everybody does, right? You know, okay, he has a nice Twitter following. Okay, he's on LinkedIn doing things, you know, right. and it just goes deeper into that relationship immediately. It kind of cuts through a lot of fluff, I feel like.
Absolutely. This is one of the main reasons why I'm going to hop on my soapbox.
Yeah, go for it, man.
This is the main reason why I say that digital branding is so important, because I've come across many individuals that have a great brick and mortar brand, right? They're getting a lot of referrals in, but when I look them up online, it's like what you told me earlier on, I don't see any of this stuff online. So the credibility that I see you have when I met you was there. I was excited, ready to go, but just it's not present online. So if I never met you, have never had that conversation with you, when I look at your digital brand, I don't feel the same. And so it's important to establish that strong digital brand because people are going to be Google searching you. They're going to look at your social media. They're going to look at your credibility, right, overall. And so what I've learned is that, one, it helps me to close clients.
I bet. Yeah.
You know, my close rate is pretty good because mostly because of my platform. So they say, okay, this guy knows what he's talking about.
Sure.
Because I love to share content that, you know, helps people. And so based on that, you know, I'm able to close these clients. But for others who don't have that platform, right, I think it's important just to start documenting your journey, right? And so for those who are having difficulty creating content, or for those who are, you know, just don't believe that they have that personality to do so, just document your journey. And at the very least, if people see that you're trying to build something, if they continue to receive that type of content, they automatically have a vested interest and some affinity for you just to see you kind of win.
Right.
You know, even if they may not use your business or not, they may know someone else. right? And again, it's all about staying top of mind. And so as you begin to document your journey and build your digital brand, you're going to have a better chance to get more customers, clients, and leads.
Man, I think that's a great point, man, because a lot of times I'm talking to other salespeople. I'm like, guys, I don't know how you don't go harder at something. I mean, whether it's making content for your business or whether it's just being more active online, sharing funny memes, just, whatever you're up to. I mean, that's one of the main reasons why I started this actual podcast. I was like, okay, I can talk about sales. I can add value here. And it's a way for me to kind of build up my actual personal brand as well. And it's had an impact on my customers. Even though I'm not even selling anything to them, it's just the fact that I'm active and I'm just now a better networker. So I can plug other people, right? And so, man, I think that's a great point, man. And, I want to ask you some things about the actual education system as well.
Sure.
Because you've been at the university now for 6+ years, right?
Yeah.
And so I had a marketing degree, and it's one of those things where, are they teaching a lot of the students coming out these days to say, hey, you got to have a much stronger presence online? I mean, is that something that's being clearly conveyed?
I think they're forced to, even if, no matter what institution it is, you're going to be forced to change some of your curriculum to what students actually want, right? So, one of the reasons why, I started Digital Branding Institute because I had a thirst for trying to get a PhD.
Okay.
And so
are you still going for it?
Well, here's the story.
yeah, let's go.
So I did a couple interviews, informational interviews with some students in the PhD program. And after those interviews and kind of some soul searching, I decided I can do everything that I want to do without a PhD outside of being a tenured professor at a research university.
Sure.
Which really wasn't my thing. I'm more of a practitioner. And so I said I can still write books. I can still lecture. I can still, have speaking engagements, whatever the case may be.
Isn't that crazy right now, though, man? I mean, it's crazy how you can pull all that off. I mean, if you have the right, experience, resume to back up what you're talking about.
You certainly can.
Yeah.
And so going back to my point about institutions having innovative curriculum, they're starting to pull in practitioners, right? And so, for example, I remember, I think it was Stanford. I went to Cal, but Stanford had Tyra Banks teaching a class. Right. And so
I think she still does too, though,
really?
right? I think so. I mean, well,
I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. So
the MBA program.
Those are the type of programming that these institutions should implement, and they are, right. The more innovative universities are doing that type of stuff, and so it's where education is going is it's more niche related. It has to be in order for it to survive. I mean, I think higher education will always be around, of course, but I think it's going to look a little bit different because people have access to information now because of the internet. People, especially in this generation, are starting to believe that you don't need to go to college to be successful because they see Kylie Jenner is now got $900 million of sales in makeup, and so it's like she's doing most of that stuff based on her social media and all this other stuff, right? So now this generation is starting to think a little bit different, right? Than when we were coming up back in the day, as far as trying to set a good career path for us and stability and so on. So with higher education, man, it has to get to a point where we're bringing in practitioners, we're having innovative programming, innovative curriculum in order to attract today's students.
Man, it's bananas too, because I feel like education has really shifted, and people always get on me because sometimes I go a little bit too hard left, but so I was watching this actual YouTube clip, and there was this girl on there. She was much younger. I'm not sure how old. And she's like, yeah, I'm dropping out so I can go really build my YouTube channel. And I'm thinking college, dropping out of college, right? She's dropping out of high school, man.
Wow.
I was like, whoa, what?
Wow.
I was like, this is what the generation's kind of getting into. I mean, but then I was talking to my wife, and she's like, yeah, this is a thing. She's like, people are leaving high school so they can build YouTube channels. Have you heard of this?
Well,
this whole phenomenon?
I'm not surprised by it at all.
Yeah.
Not surprised by it at all.
I was blown away. I was like, what?
There are several different YouTube stars that are making, a lot of money, 7 figures. So yeah, I value higher education. I think that, you can spend any amount of time starting your YouTube channel. If you have a cell phone, now you have a YouTube channel, right? You can have a YouTube channel. So for them to drop out of school, I don't know if that's the best route. If they're really passionate about it, I'm always down for someone following their passion, but I certainly think that there's smart ways to do it.
Right, man. I mean, and, do you have any advice to students that might be listening who are just interested in trying to find the right educational programs? Obviously, you have your own, but how do you kind of, go through all the lists on Udemy and all the rest of these people and choose the right person to kind of follow and say, okay, they might know their stuff?
Gotcha. Yeah, there are a lot of, to what you alluded to earlier, there are a lot of gurus out there. So I would say, just stick with one that resonates with you the most. Stick with one that actually has done the work. Yeah. Look at their track record, meaning, look at what they've accomplished. Look at what things that they're doing outside of just providing this information to you. Right. I think that's very, very important. So if they're only creating this course, and that's it. But if they're, if they have a course, if they're volunteering, if they're on a board, if you see them doing things that are within the wheelhouse of whatever it is that they're promoting, their main focus, then, I would say, it's all good. Yeah, I'll say it's all good, but just be wary and make sure that they actually have the credibility to back up what they're saying.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think that's perfect advice because you want to talk to somebody who's been there, exactly. At least been in the trenches, because it's so easy to act like you've been there. Yeah. But very few people have actually gone through. Not saying very few. A lot of people that promote some of the things that they talk about might not know the intricate details of what it really takes to actually execute those things. Exactly. Man, so you know what, man, we are about to wrap up, and I really appreciate you taking the moment on Saturday right before you go have a blast. But what's next for you, man? What's the next big play?
The next big play is just continuing to build this agency. Yeah. So DIGITAL DELANE is the agency where my team is growing. We're at about 12 people now, including myself. And so we're working with some awesome clients, have a good deal of entertainment clients as well, which I'm excited about, working with some fitness brands, working with the financial institution, law, real estate. So we pretty much run the gamut with regard to digital, helping people to build their digital brands. So that's the next thing, really just acquiring, bigger accounts and trying to make a bigger splash. Yeah. That's it. Yeah.
Man, so, when you say bigger accounts, I'm just kind of being nosy now. Sure. What's the average size that you go after? I mean,
honestly, it varies. So I work with just an individual who's just trying to establish himself. Work with this one lady who's positioning herself as a dating expert for women over 50.
And that's actually a good niche to have, man.
It absolutely is. So we've helped to build her complete digital brand, from website to social media to content strategy, programming, the whole nine. Wow. And then up to Toyota, working with their 2020 mobility campaign. Wow. So it varies. Yeah. It varies. Mm-hmm.
Man. That's really cool though, man. You have a nice range there. It sounds like that, and obviously a really good team behind you, man. So you know what? You got to plug, all your links. Tell everybody how to find you, man, and then we'll go ahead and wrap it up.
Awesome, man. Well, if you want more information about me, just follow me on social media, Juntae DeLane. That's all my handles. If you Google search me, put in Juntae, however you think it sounds, I will pop up. So all my social media there, the main site, digitaldelane.com. If you need some done-for-you services, and if you really want to learn more about digital branding, digitalbrandinginstitute.com as well.
Super dope, man. Well, you know what, guys? That's a wrap. Juntae, man. I think I got your name right this time, brother. Man, I really do appreciate you again coming on, man. Until next time, guys, you guys be great. Nobody there with me when I had to
walk through the rain. Nobody. Yeah, I really went through some pain. I remember I was locked in a cage. Yeah. So I got on my knees and I asked God for my life to change. Amen. And I can't lie, ever since then I ain't looked at life the same. I can't lie. Shit, I'm just glad he let a young nigga live to see brighter days. I need it all, ain't got time to wait. No, I gotta get it right away, right now. And I'm still in the trap with my young niggas trying to run it up. The same ones that love me now, they laughed at me when I caught the bus. They did. But these pussy niggas said they gon' rob who? They sound dumb as fuck. Tell them niggas come try their luck. These niggas out here throwing dirt on my name. But they just mad as fuck cause I done bossed up and finally got me some change. Yeah, they want the money, yeah, they want the fame, but they don't wanna go through the pain. And yeah, bitch, hard body still a gang, and that shit ain't never gon' change. No, that shit ain't never gon' change. These bitches out here throwing dirt on my name. But they just mad as fuck cause I done bossed up and finally got me some change. Yeah, they want the money, yeah, they want the fame, but they don't wanna go through the pain. And yeah, bitch, hard body still a gang, and that shit ain't never gon' change. No, that shit ain't never gon' change.
Yeah, Delhi poppin', how we look, nigga steady earthquaking, got him shook, nigga moving around town with the troops, nigga true, nigga youngin' hear my line, what it do, nigga, hey, bro, I know you got to play, hit me back, he on the way, that's an easy 10K, we should call that Kim K, make $1 million in a day, Frank Lucas can't relate, cause we never gonna say, when them people in our face, that's on me, put in work, that's OT, stacks on deck, SOD, my respect, came for free, cut the check, I need fee, don't leave crib, nothing less, 10 a fee, old school player, Tennessee.
Shit is on right now, I'm about to lay it down. Keep them coming by the dozens, oh, even hustle to my cousins. Whoa, shadows never meant a thing to me.
These niggas out here throwing dirt on my name, but they just mad as fuck cause I done bossed up and finally got me some change. Yeah, they want the money, yeah, they want the fame, but they don't wanna go through the pain. And yeah, bitch, hard body still a gang, and that shit ain't never gon' change. No, that shit ain't never gon' change. These bitches out here throwing dirt on my name, but they just mad as fuck cause I done bossed up and finally got me some change. Yeah, they want the money, yeah, they want the fame, but they don't wanna go through the pain. And yeah, bitch, hard body still a gang, and that shit ain't never gon' change.